Today we will be talking about medieval universities and intellectual figures in medieval Europe. In the medieval ages, great places of learning popped up all across Europe. These were called universities. The universities were the centers of learning in medieval European culture. These universities helped spread knowledge throughout the European world. In medieval Europe, many influential intellectual figures also came about. The first universities in Europe were usually held in any space available, such as a church. However, soon these schools and universities began renting or building their own areas to have the classes. The first university in Europe was the University of Bologna in Bologna, Italy. After Bologna, a number of universities popped up all over, such as the University of Oxford in Britain, University of Salamanca in Spain, and the University of Paris in present-day France. The first true university was the University of Bologna. The University of Bologna was the first place of learning to be called a universitas, or the Latin for university. Another thing that set it apart was it was not influenced by the ecclesiastics. The ecclesiastics are the church, but it did employ the clergy. The University of Bologna also issued secular and non-secular degrees, secular meaning religious arts. One of the most critical figures in creating a learning system in Europe was Alcuin of York. Alcuin of York was born around 735 AD and was taught by the Archbishop Ecbert. Afterwards, Alcuin was invited by Charlemagne to be a leading scholar in the Carolingian court. Alcuin was a critical figure as he taught the liberal arts, or the seven learned sisters, and religion to the king and his sons, and eventually these subjects, known as the trivium and the quadrivium, were adopted all over Europe. The subjects that were taught and created by Alcuin were the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium consisted of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. The quadrivium consisted of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. The quadrivium was considered the prep work of theology. Together, the trivium and the quadrivium were called the seven liberal arts, or the seven learned sisters. Grammar schools became important in Europe as they were very common and the predecessor to universities. Charlemagne pushed for grammar schools to be set up in every bishopric and monastery in Europe. Grammar schools prepared students for the challenges of the universities and taught them Latin, which would be used in their university. Byzantium was also important in keeping intellectual ideas alive. As it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, it held importance and thus was a central hub of intellectual ideas in the Middle Ages. One of the most important intellectual figures in Europe was Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was one of the most important people in shaping the church as it is today. Thomas believed that God's truth was in the Bible, but that humans should also study nature because it was also God's work. Thomas believed that philosophy and theology could be blended together. Scholasticism was a new belief that God gave man the ability to discover God through natural revelation and divine revelation. Natural revelation being man using his five senses and his mind through logic and rhetoric to find God, and divine revelation using divine tradition and divine scripture to find God. This belief was first created by Peter Abelard. The universities quickly adopted this belief in their teachings. Iconoclasm was a belief in early medieval Europe, which believed that all icons, like paintings, sculpture, or mosaics, were forms of idolatry. Iconoclasm was very common in Byzantine because of its geographic location. Iconoclasm was influenced by the Islamic prohibition against images, and due to Byzantine being a mixing pot of beliefs and ideologies, it quickly spread throughout the population. All these ideas and uh, universities helped shape medieval Europe as it is and as we know it today. Thank you for watching.